kitchen, and today I'm going to show you how to make a crustless quiche using your homemade baking mix. Now this is a recipe that comes from the 1970s, and they used to call it the impossible quiche, and it came from the Bisquick company, and you can still find Bisquick in stores, but we know how to make a Bisquick type mix from scratch that saves us a lot of money. So we're going to be using that recipe today, the baking mix recipe, and then we're going to add some other things to make a wonderful meal. Whenever we start, the first thing we do is we review the recipe, read it all the way through so we know what all the steps are, what kind of things we're going to need, what time we need to set the oven, things like that, the timing, is it going to work? Then we say, do I have all the ingredients? For our recipe here, there's a choice of ingredients you can use. For a quiche, you could make a very plain cheese, egg, and milk quiche, and it's really delicious. You can also add leftover vegetables, leftover meats, some interesting seasonings, things like that. So for our quiche today, I have chosen 3 ingredients that are really good that I like. I have the grated cheese, which is really nice because that's in all quiches. But look at this. I found in my freezer some kale, and I've chopped it up here, and I have a few pieces of bacon that I found that needed to be cooked up, and I cooked those up ahead of time and chopped them up. But this could easily be your leftover carrots from last night's dinner, or peas. You could chop up onions. This could be some ham. It could be salmon. It could be leftover chicken chopped up, whatever you want. And when you see it come together, you'll know the kinds of proportions you want and the choices. So I have the ingredients I need, plus I have my baking mix, and I'm going to also need eggs and milk. And I have those in my fridge too, so I am good to go. The other things I need to have are a place to mix things. So I have a mixing bowl and I have a whisk. I love using a whisk, but you can use a fork. You don't need to use a whisk, or you could use a spoon, whatever. I have my measuring cups, and I also have a dish. Now this is not your usual quiche dish, but you know what? You can make quiche in any kind of flat pan you want. You could use a cake pan, whatever. So we're going to use this today, and we'll see what it's like when it's done. Okay, so I've got my ingredients, I've got my tools, I've read the recipe, I am good to start. I have set my oven at 350 degrees because it needs to preheat. So before I start mixing anything, I have set my oven. The next thing it says on my recipe is that I need to butter or oil a pie plate. So here is my plate, and the reason we do this is because we want to be able to get our lovely quiche out. We don't want it to stick. And that's the reason why we would oil or butter a pie plate. Now you could use butter on this instead of oil. You could use lard. I could have saved some of the bacon fat when I cooked my bacon. And I could have used that fat too, because that would also add some flavor. So this isn't really the oil isn't really for food content. It really is so that when your quiche bakes, you can actually get it out of the pan later. So I have an oily pan there. I've got my cheese already grated, and my vegetable and my meat all chopped up here. So now I'm going to mix all the other ingredients. And this recipe calls for 4 eggs. So I have my eggs here. I'm going to break my eggs into this bowl. At Open Sky, some of our chickens lay blue eggs. It's kind of fun. But most of them are brown. They all look the same inside, just like people. There's 3 eggs, and this is number 4. Woohoo! Okay, so we have 4 eggs in here, and I'm going to whisk those together first. So they're all nicely mixed. Next, I need 2 cups of milk. There's my measuring cup. One cup. And there's my second cup. So I'm going to put that in my bowl. It also calls for a little bit of salt and pepper. I'm going to get a spoon for that. This is a 1 teaspoon measure. And when you're doing really careful baking that use baking powder and baking soda, you have to be really careful. When you're using salt and pepper in a meal like this, it's really something that you do to taste. So I'm just going to put a sprinkling of salt here, because I like just a little bit of salt and not too much. And for the pepper, gosh, who has this much pepper in their house? I don't know. I don't. I'm just going to sprinkle some pepper though too, because I like just a little bit of pepper for flavor. But you know what else I'm thinking about? Thinking about what else do I like the flavor of? Maybe I like the flavor of oregano in Italian. I could put that in. Maybe I like garlic. Maybe I'd put that in. But today I am going to use mustard. Mustard goes really nicely with cheese, and I just did a splorch in there because that's what I want, and it's not going to be too much. So that probably was about a teaspoon. So now we have our eggs and milk and seasoning in there. We have to mix in our baking mix. And what's interesting is I only need 1 cup of baking mix. So we made this baking mix earlier, and that mix contains flour, salt, baking powder, and lard cut in. So there's fat in it, there is flour, and there's leavening, which is the baking powder. So I'm going to take 1 cup of this, okay, 1 full cup of this, and I'm going to put it in here. And now the recipes always say mix it really, really, really well. I'm not sure why, but I am not going to try it otherwise. So I'm going to try and mix this really well. Might be a little noisy for a minute. Okay. I think I've got most of the lumps out of that. See, it just looks like a bit of a batter. So now is the time we get to put it together. So here is our greased pan, and what they say is to put things just in the bottom of it. I'm going to start with the bacon, and I'm going to scatter it across the bottom of this so it's all evenly distributed. So when we cut it up, everybody gets a little bit of bacon. I'm going to put the kale on top, all these bits of kale in small pieces. I put them in small pieces so that when you get a bite, you don't get a long stringy piece, you just get a small piece. And then I'm going to put the cheese on top of that. There we go. And as I say, you don't even have to put all these other things. Really, the key ingredients are the eggs, the milk, and the cheese, and the baking mix. And if that's all you have, you could still make a really nice cheese pie. So there we go. So there is, watch this, we're just going to pour it over. We don't even have to do anything more than just pour it over the top, so that it's all evenly distributed there. Scrape it out a bit. There we go. And I am going to just push those little green things down so that they all get covered with that nice egg mixture, and they'll stay inside the quiche. Look at that. And that is it. We are going to put it in the oven for 35 minutes. I might check it after half an hour, and what I'll do is I'll stick a knife in, and if the knife comes out and it's clean, then it means that the pie is done. If the knife comes out and there's a little bit of egg stuck to it, I might stick it in for 5 more minutes just to make sure it's done. So here it goes into the oven. And we'll set the timer for half an hour and we'll check it then. We had extra cheese, so I pulled this out of the oven quickly and put it just on the top, because who doesn't like more cheese? Oh, it still needs to bake in the middle. So 5 more minutes. Okay, well the timer went off and it looks like our quiche is ready to come out of the oven. So let's see. There it is. Whoopsie, I cannot get a hold of it. Look at that. Isn't that beautiful? There we go. There's a quiche all ready for lunch. What I'm going to do while it's warm is I'll run a knife around the edge of it to make sure it's loosened, and then I'm going to let it sit for 10 minutes. They say with this crustless quiche that you have to make sure that you let it sit for at least 10 minutes before you serve it, because otherwise it can fall apart. So this is just going to allow it to set, and we're good to go. Okay, we've let this sit now for about 10 minutes, and we're going to cut it and see what it looks like. I wonder if there is really going to be a crust at the bottom of this quiche. Who knows? Let me see if I can cut it into some nice sized wedges. Lunch-sized wedges, right? How many am I getting out of here? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I'm going to get 5 nice servings here. All right. Let me lift up from the bottom. I'll see if it comes out of the pan cleanly. Oh my gosh. There it is. Wow. Now it looks like it's got a little crust on the bottom. And look at that, and all of the other ingredients are on the top. Let me see if I can get another one out here that also can show that. Get all the edges clear. That's right.
Can you mention why the edges are clear?
So I ran my knife around the edge of the pan when it was still warm, and that made sure that I could get it out later. Look at that. Look at those 2 pieces. Aren't they yummy? All the cheese is crispy on the top. The other ingredients are in the middle. And look, there's a little bit of a crust on the bottom. So it comes out of the pan nice and clean. Bon appetit.